By on the Illini, this is a Mike Cagley with Brad Sturdy, Ked Prince Steve Sturm. Sturdy finishing off a birthday cake for his daughter, not sharing. My personal opinion is if you're going to be on the internet with cake and you don't have enough to share with everybody, you shouldn't have any. Oh, there we are. That seems like a virtue signal, Brad.
You want to see pictures of them? They're awesome.
I don't want to see pictures of them because I have not eaten for a long time for me.
Like 30 minutes. It's been like 30 minutes.
You know what, Brad? Your humor is a little bit exaggerated. It's been 33 minutes.
Okay.
So, Illinois wins look, let's be real honest here. Before the weekend, if we would have known that the basketball team would win by 19 and the football team would win by 18, you do that most years for Illinois and people will be pretty excited. But we have our expectations higher. This is why coaches get frustrated with fans and media. But because the expectations are higher, now we're like, just 19 and 18? What is this?
It's true. I think it's a lot about how they played. I didn't feel like they played very well. And they got some bad breaks, let's be honest. They did get a few bad breaks with some calls that could have changed face mask or whatever.
How do you not call a face mask when it's the quarterback with the ball? Every camera's on him.
That's a really hard one to miss. Evidently there's not enough officials out on the field.
And then the other thing, Brad, here's the other thing that frustrates me. The replay official can stop the game. Oh, he might not have caught that. Let's stop the game. So the other team doesn't have to use a timeout. And then Altmaier gets his head roughly almost torn off his body, but the replay official can't stop the clock for that. It's just, I don't know how you manage the clock better, or the replays better, but there has to be a way.
One would think that there's a better way to do that. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah, we still won. Won.
Still a dub. Still a dub. 7 wins. Could be much worse. I mean, we're living in first world problems as Illini fans right now, aren't we?
Exactly. Brett Bielema, say what you want. Brett Bielema has made the Illini relevant when it comes. Like, we're looking about if they can win 2 games, which is not going to be easy because Wisconsin is starting to play better, and certainly so are the guys at Northwestern, who I thought, to be honest, probably played better than Michigan today. But anyway. They end up, it's going to be hard to get to 9 wins, but we're looking at Illinois could go to another New Year's Day Bowl on back-to-back years. It's not very often that happens either.
Yeah. So 89 and 90 was the last time we had 2 consecutive years of 7 wins.
Yep.
And then the last time we had 2 consecutive years of 9 wins, I got my scrolling finger. I
don't think it's ever happened.
I'm not sure. It might, maybe in the 60s. I didn't get that far down, but all I know is it's not this century and it's not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we get there, but let's just keep that in mind as we talk about, oh gosh, this is a boring win today. We only beat Maryland by 18. It should have been more than 18. And Maryland's not that bad of a team. So yeah, we got to still be able to appreciate this. It was a boring first half. It was an even more boring second half. But guess what? We are that good that we can not be prepared to play this game early on. We can not have any explosive plays. We can have breaks go against us and still win by 18 against a pretty good team. It's not so bad. Life's not so bad.
Yeah. Ked, your thoughts on it?
Steve's such a level-headed guy. Gosh darn it, Steve. But I'll tell you.
He's a radical alternative, Ked, so just
let us know.
He's right, but damn it, it was boring, man. I don't want to see that. You're right. And we shouldn't take it for granted because we've all seen the bad times and how bad it's been. And I understand that. I really and truly understand all that stuff. But you would think that you would see a little bit better performance. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I just know it didn't look pretty. And we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And part of it was the mistakes that were made and just the drop balls, and you get a good run from Luke Altmaier. Oh, there's a flag, is coming back, and just a number of things like that just took the excitement out of the game, I think, for a lot of people, not just me. It tells you where Illinois football has come because you're right. Let's think about it. Years ago, we really were just lucky enough to, like we mentioned at halftime, to be up 14-6. This wasn't bullets. I mean, we knew that there was a possibility that they could come out and win and play well the second half. And it was competitive. I do think this. I really do believe that the next two games, they don't need any extra motivation. The coaches won't have to say anything. Brad Bielema won't, but I'm sure the other coaches will say stuff. Hey, Coach Henry played here. Brad Bielema got his career started here. We got to make sure we get a win, blah, blah, blah. Then Northwestern is that rivalry. So I do think the next two games you'll see a much better effort, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I do too. And one thing to keep in mind is when you look at it, at the end of the first half, it was obviously 14-6, and there was a 1 yard difference in offense. Like it was 172 to 173. At the end of the game, Illinois ends up with 397 yards of offense. They end up with, compared to 293 for Maryland, Illinois ends up with 35 minutes with the ball, Maryland 24. Everything was about equal at the half, and Illinois did dominate in the second half. Now we do have the Circle of Life who has a serious question for us. I'm almost afraid to see what he's going to type in there because Lord only knows what kind of serious questions we could have, but we are willing to answer serious questions.
It's a buttercream cake with some apple pie filling.
Ooh.
Oh, so, it was interesting.
Oh, that wasn't what the question was? Oh, I'm sorry.
Now we're on a site. Yeah.
Yeah. Brad's a little bit tunnel vision right now. You ask him all the cake questions you want. Don't ask him about the Illini.
Yeah.
Well, I'm good. You can ask me those too. I'm in on that too. I just watched. Hey, I watched the game with replay. That was cool. Like I wasn't in the stadium today, so when you're live in the stadium, man, it's totally different.
It's different.
You can't see those extra plays. You can't go back on your TV 4 times. But no, here's the thing. Like I thought the second half they did a much better job. I thought the offensive line was much better in the second half. Sans that one goal line stand, which I really think a lot of that. You have a 258-pound back, maybe giving the ball on the 1 yard line. I don't know. Maybe I'm warped there. But the fourth down call, I really didn't mind the fourth down play call, getting the ball in Luke's hands, letting it move after you got stumped. I'm not against that. But outside of that one little sequence, they were pretty good on offense in the second half. They did a good job. One touchdown gets called by the holding penalty, which was at best questionable. I like that. And I thought the defense, for all the way they've been maligned this year, they did what they were planning to do, and that was to make them beat them by passing the football. They weren't going to let him run, and he didn't really run. He had a couple runs, but not much, and they made him throw from the pocket, and they did a great job. They held him down to 6 points. Is pretty good. That's pretty good defense. You can hold them 6 points.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with the win, but they're going to have, like you mentioned, they're going to have to play better next week at Wisconsin. They're going to have to play better at the end of the year against Northwestern. I hope that if they beat Wisconsin, we get a really good crowd against Northwestern, even though I know that's historically not a strong home crowd for that game.
It's a cold crowd for that game too. So, Steve, what did you see defensively that maybe helped Illini tighten up things versus some past performances?
Yeah, so they actually went super vanilla today on defense, which was the perfect thing to do against Malik Washington. He's a dynamic talent. He can really make things happen with his feet. And it seemed like from watching Maryland throughout the year, like their best play is wait till the pass rush gets in and then he scrambles around and does something amazing. They put up some pretty good numbers this year, Maryland. Let's keep that in mind. Holding them to 6 is a fantastic performance. That's really good work by our defense today. And to answer your actual question, though, it was really simple. They kept the rush lanes. They rushed 4, barely blitzed all day. They kept the linebackers in short coverage and spied Malik Washington, and they kept safeties over the top all day long too, which means that you could have the corners play conservative, but also like play in the short zones so that they didn't have deep coverage like all day long. It was really simple. And then of course Malik Washington's short. So if you're going to keep him in the pocket, get your hands up. We saw several deflections. It worked pretty darn well, I'd say. We didn't have, it's not a showy performance. We didn't force turnovers. We didn't have big sacks, big hits and all that. But hey, if you allow 6 points to a top offense, that I wouldn't call them a top offense. That's probably an exaggeration. If you allow 6 points to a really good offense, or frankly, any offense in the Big Ten these days, that's good. That's a good day. That's a grade A job on defense today. And when you can do it simply, that means that you're a good defense. Can't say anything bad about them today.
No, and I'll tell you what, just real
Yeah.
quick, we're focusing on that for the fans out there listening. Maryland averages 26 points a game. 26 points a game, and you held them. And the performance was great, but also it shows growth to me. Now, Maryland is not a great team, but again, they average 26 points a game, and we all know how good Rutgers is as far as a passing team and what they do on offense. As a matter of fact, I think Rutgers averaged 30 points a game. So you got to give the defense some credit. I will say me, I'm not going to say we, you guys can own it or whatever, was very critical of the defense, and they're making strides. Wisconsin doesn't have a great offense, and Northwestern's getting better. But what I see now is that I see like Aaron Henry's kind of doing what Brad Underwood does in basketball. Teams can't run, they make him one-dimensional. He's taking things away from him. Whoever has been in his ear, and maybe they've done some things differently in practice, who knows? There's all these different rumors out there, but it's working for him right now, and I want to continue to see that.
Brad, what did you like on the defensive side? Anything that we didn't talk about?
What I liked is the tackling. Outside of a couple of plays, I thought they did a really good job tackling. When you make tackles, and you don't miss tackles, it's much easier to get stops and win games. And I think that's what I thought they did a good job of, was making the key tackles, making those plays and shutting them down. They were better on third down than they've been for a long time. So I think those are positive things that you can build on for the future. But I thought they also were really disciplined. Pat Farrell had a really good game, which is probably the best game. He had a couple of tip passes, but I thought overall I would say that this is probably one of their best defensive efforts from the standpoint of just doing what they, just being disciplined and staying in their lanes, all those types of things that they did. I thought they did a good job of that today.
Offensively, I think we mentioned the offensive line just played better. Steve, were there any schematic reasons that was going on, or was it just pure old-fashioned execution, which sometimes people don't want to hear that, but that sometimes if you just do your dang job, things look pretty good.
Yeah, you know what the schematic difference was, though? It was Maryland's defense. Maryland voluntarily took their foot off the gas in the second half. They were trying to drop people into the passing zones and play for interceptions. So they were not bringing blitzers very often in the second half. Our offensive line, Brad's right, our offensive line played way better in the second half. First half, they were a little shaky. We saw too many free runners. I commented to my sons, we just came from a college football game, like a Division III football game, where we saw several times this today, like where I repeated to them, anytime you see offensive linemen running toward the quarterback during the play, you screwed up. And we saw that so many times today. And then all of a sudden we're seeing in the Illinois game. And I'm like, oh no, that's the worst thing you ever want to see when you're a quarterback. I was never a quarterback, of course, but I'm sure that's the worst thing you can ever see. You see your buddy running towards you during the play, that means he has messed up. So anyway, we saw too much of that in the first half. And then in the second half, no, it was very solid. We did a little bit more lead blocking in the middle, and Illinois did a good job opening up the middle for runs. You saw a couple, I wouldn't call them gadget plays, but we saw a few more outside runs. The Sanders run, we saw the delayed handoff to Jordan Anderson. When you run a little, again, you might call it a gadget play. When you run an unexpected, low risk outside run, that's pretty darn effective as far as opening up the middle. We talked about it at halftime. Brett Bielema loves his conservative offense, and that's a great way to create opportunities later on for vanilla plays. A simple lead run up the middle to Caden Fagan gets really effective when all of a sudden the defense is questioning whether they need to follow that guy outside. Schematically, offensively, I thought we were still pretty vanilla, but it's effective in the second half. Offense in the first half, I wasn't super thrilled. Second half, we really did just march the ball up and down the field. In the second half, obviously, you'd like to get some more points. The calls don't help us in those situations, but still, it was effective in the second half. Schematically, really, it was just simple stuff, but that's the Brett Bielema playbook right there.
I want to ask you guys, do we sound like, as media guys or fans / whatever you want to call them, that we cry when you don't get calls? So let's face it, the interception was a horrible call. The horrible call with Clement, and then the face mask. Is it just Illinois things, or are we just making a big deal out of something that's not there and shouldn't say anything? I'm serious. Help me understand that.
I'll answer that
I'm
real
always
quick.
right.
Yeah. Hey, how about? But I thought the roughing the unnecessary roughness call was bad against
Yeah.
Maryland. I thought Luke Altmaier totally baited that kid into getting the unnecessary
did.
roughness. I think he was. So that's the way I would. I don't know. I guess that's my take on that. I think sometimes it happens, but also I do think that there are just bad calls, and you call them out when they're both ways. So
Yeah, I think we do a
I
pretty
do
good job
try to
of
check myself, and I do try
Yeah.
to check myself every now and then and go, okay, yes, that was a terrible call, but you try to think back to this or that happened, and that they do even out, or at least that's what I tell myself in order to get myself to sleep. But
Yeah, and I do think we do a pretty good job. We whine, there's no doubt, but we also do a pretty good job of saying when the other team got screwed over. My best example would be Texas Tech when I think the referee called the flagrant foul according to the letter, but not at all the spirit of the rule. And I also noted at the time Illinois had shot 21 free throws and Texas Tech
Yep.
had shot 3. So you may not whine about that one so much. So we do try to be even-handed here. But I thought today the breaks on the calls went a little bit Maryland's way. It is what it is. They don't really call many holds in the Big Ten. And Khalil Valentine had to be one of the tissue softest holding calls I've seen compared to other times when you see I think an offensive lineman could have a blackjack and a bullwhip and not get a holding call. And then when he goes up and goes like this, and that's a hold, we were chuckling about it here. Seriously, you're after what you've ignored all day, you're calling that. But I got to go back to that play. If I'm an NFL team looking at Luke Altmaier, the way that was a wonderful play, but the way he uses his legs to get out of trouble, I'm not saying I'm going to draft him and he's going to lead my team to the Super Bowl, but that's a guy that I want to see what he can do at the next level and at least give him the opportunity, because when he had a chance to adapt to Lunny's offense, he's really been an outstanding quarterback. And I wrote an article in July talking about all the milestones and where he could move up to in the all-time list, and he's going to make a mark on the record book for Illinois. So, Brad, maybe talk a little bit about Luke and what he did today, because I thought his legs were as important as his arm today.
he did a really good job. The one thing I think Luke Altmaier, and I know this maybe, I think he's the best quarterback that has been at Illinois since probably Jeff George. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I think Kirk Hitler and Jeff George are pretty close.
Yeah,
Even though Jeff had a better
Jeff George was a better NFL quarterback for sure, but I think Altmaier's the best. I think he's up there with those guys. He's done things that they have never. That really, he's going to do things that neither one of them did. You know what I mean? And there's more to it than that. Obviously, it's about the guys around you too. But I really think that his ability to not only make plays with his feet, make plays with his arm, make good decisions, even the interception he threw today, it wasn't a dangerous play because Maryland didn't have any timeouts and there was 11 seconds to go in the half. And it was a time to take a shot. You know what I mean? Because you could run it out on the next play or whatever. I think that he just makes really smart plays. He got rid of the ball. He finds a way to get the ball to the right guys. You saw them, and he reads plays really well. Like that the bubble screen to Beatty was a great read by both the receiver and the quarterback, because the receiver said, "Hey, they both jumped to Hank. I'm going." And Hudson Clements got a touchdown. And it was a great read by Luke, because some guys would have just thrown it to Hank anyway, right? Just thrown it because that was maybe the play call, right? And it wasn't, he found the open guy. So those are little things where you are able to make smart plays. And I think he's an accurate passer, especially when he's under. I think where he's gotten better is the ability to stay in the pocket and take pressure and handle that pressure. 2 years ago, he wasn't as good at that, and he got better last year. This year, he's been really good at it because let's be honest, he's still under a lot of duress at times back there and makes plays. And so, yeah, I think Luke Altmaier is one of the best quarterbacks we've had at Illinois, really, I guess, ever. So that's saying something.
It is when you consider Dave Wilson, Tony Eason, Jack Trudeau, Jeff George, Kurt Kittner, Juice Williams. There's some
Shieldhouse.
good quarterback. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nathan, yeah,
Okay, see, I was waiting for my turn because I was gonna say Nathan Shieldhouse to me is the best quarterback we've had since Jeff George, and I think it's a pretty even comparison actually between he and Altmaier, especially when you consider that Nathan Shieldhouse had to deal with a change of administration, like 2 changes of administration during his time, like different offensive coordinators, whole different schemes. They went from all passing to all running during his time, and he was expected to carry the load in both, which he did because he was a pretty darn good player. And then as far as his future, I got subscribers don't like to hear this, but Luke Altmaier, like Nathan Shieldhouse, is not an NFL quarterback. And like Nathan Shieldhouse, he's a great college player and a very smart player and a great competitor. But I'm going to say, like Shieldhouse, the sooner he gets into the coaching ranks, the better it will be for him. Because now we got Nathan Shieldhouse as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And I think that is the best career path. And he's still, 35, 36, something like that? I'm probably misremembering the numbers because, that also dates me age-wise too, if he's old. But either way, he's still fairly young and an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And I think Luke Altmaier needs to think real hard about that. No competitor wants to stop competing on the field, but I think that's his future.
I like to see him get a shot, because it's tough because he's not had a great offensive line. He's supposed to be really good this year. And I guess people can say if every quarterback had a good offensive line, they'd be really good. I just seen him get better and better. And I personally think he'd be a good backup quarterback somewhere. I think he's good enough. And the thing is, this year, they're allowing him to use his legs. And I think that's a nice weapon to have personally. But if you look at the big picture, to me with him, I'm just impressed with his overall growth. He got better and better each year. To your point, Steve, you're probably 100% right because as good as he is, you never hear his name mentioned anywhere as far as like the NFL or anything like that. But from an Illinois standpoint, he came back to put Illinois on the map. I think Illinois fans are very lucky to have him. He is, to Kedrick, the Iowa Sumo, even though he's not from the state of Illinois, for Brad Underwood, Iowa's Brad Underwood, what he is to Brett Bielema. He could have went anywhere. He could have left and he stayed for the right reasons. And he seems to have fun and he likes the program. He likes the school, the campus. And he's a really good kid. And he may never make the NFL and money's not going to be a problem for the kid, but at least to get a shot at it. And I know Brett's going to probably try to promote him, which he should, but it would be to him to get a shot at it, I think is saying something.
I think he goes on day 3. I think he probably gets to because he's had a good year. I think he's probably maybe late last round type pick, day 3 pick, and then you take your shot. I guess Tom Brady was a day 3 pick, so you never know. Maybe he'll be the best quarterback in NFL history. You got to have goals, right?
We had Mr. Irrelevant do pretty well.
No, and that's the thing. Once you get in there, you just don't know. I don't know that he's going to make it. I wouldn't put money on him making the NFL, but you just never know. We project guys all the time. This guy's can't miss. And some guys turn into Ryan Leaf and some guys turn into Tom Brady. And so it's a crapshoot. And I think that's true at every position. Being a smart player, and Steve makes a great point. He's elite at being cerebral. I'm going to throw that some Brad Underwoodisms.
Coach Underwood.
Some Underwoodisms. But so I think when you talk about that, I think that you go into coaching, he could be really good at it, but also it's going to help him process faster maybe in the NFL compared to some guys who go late rounds because he's able to pick that stuff up. And obviously everything's sped up there. So like Ked said, I'm happy he's here because this is a guy who stayed and he's been a key part of this program.
Yeah, and I go back to guys. Let's just use an example, Blake Bortles. You can go out on the internet and find pictures of him or films of him making throws that I don't know.
You're scaring me there for a second, Mike.
But literally, he's making throws that I'm not certain that other than Jeff George, Dan Marino, John Elway, and Joe Namath could make these throws. But he couldn't play quarterback in the NFL. The bottom line is he walked away with $50 million, though. So that I feel, but I look at a guy like Altmaier, and I do think he's going to be limited by his physical size because of the durability it's required when you have 330-pound guys wanting to tear you in little tiny pieces. That's tough. And I just don't, from a trigger standpoint, he's got a good arm, but I always thought Kurt Kittner, if he had just a little bit more arm strength, might have played in the NFL for a long time. But I do think that if I had to bet, I'd say he might be a good backup for 3 to 5 years. And once you're in there, then you never know what can happen. But like I said, it's only 3 out of 100 make it in the NFL. So you get a pretty good idea of just how good it requires people to be. Now I'm still on this. I'm on the edge of my seat trying to figure out what serious question the Circle of Life is going to ask us, because he seems to have tuned out. I was all ready for drum roll. Let's see what the question is. And nope, he's gone. Speaking of this, what are you guys hearing about next year? Are they going to go with Hampton, the NIU player who led them to a victory over Notre Dame in South Bend? Or are they going to go into the deep waters of trying to pay for a quarterback? And we've seen with Duke, when you pay for a great quarterback, but you don't manage to get the rest of the team, you can spend a lot of money to go 5-4.
Yeah.
I like what they have on the roster right now. I think there's some good young talent. I think it sends a bad message if you go out and you got young guys, because you look at Maryland's quarterback. He was a freshman. Some of these guys, I know they weren't promised anything. I know that they want to have a shot to be a backup next year. You want to, because and the quarterback room is deep. It's deep as it's been since, I don't know, probably the early 80s. But you want to give these kids a shot. If they're good enough to bring in and you think they can help you win, I don't think you recruit over all of them. I really don't. What I don't want to see, hopefully that they go to the rebuild mode and they say, okay, we're going to start the youth movement. I definitely don't want to see that. And I don't think Illinois is in a position to do that, but I don't know which direction that they're going to take next year.
You had a great, they told you what they're going to do. Immediately after the 5-5 did not pass, Illinois made offers to JUCO guys all over the country, some of the top junior college players in the country for next year, because they understood they're going to have to fill in these places. Obviously, they're going to go in the portal, but the JUCO guys, and I'm not saying this that they're bad. I'm saying this, they're going to be cheaper than guys who are proven Power 5 players already who are coming in the portal. Yeah, I think, but the way I think you have to build this roster, I think Ethan Hampton's a good quarterback. I think that they have a really good young quarterback on the sidelines too, who's going to be good.
Trey Petty?
No. I'm not gonna.
Carson Boyd.
I think Carson Boyd's the guy.
You've got a guy coming in who's going to be pretty good.
I think's really good, right?
Yes,
You've got some guys
him.
coming in. So what I think you do is you make sure that you've got the right players around them. I like some of their, obviously Hank Beatty's gone, but you've seen some really good stuff out of receivers. You got to replace defensive line and offensive line. That's my thing. I think that's where they have to become strong. And they have a couple young guys that I think need to be in the mix. I don't think you recruit 5 new offensive linemen and 5 new defensive linemen, or 4 new defensive linemen. You recruit guys to fill in, and you want to have a developmental program, but you also have to have impact guys, and that's the ones you want to recruit. I know they have the top JUCO offensive lineman that they've already offered, and that I think he's already got a visit set up for 29th of November. These are the kind of things that you want to do. So I think you've seen what they're going to do. They're like, okay, we're not going to be able to bring these guys back for another year. So we're going to get impact guys to come in, immediately be in the starting lineup, have an opportunity to play. And we're going to build those young guys so that when they start playing as juniors and seniors, they're developed, they're ready to go. May get a little bit of time next year. We start moving that up. I think that's the way you have to do it. At quarterback, I think it depends on how much money you have, because you aren't getting a great quarterback unless you're paying a ton of money, which means we're in the salary cap era essentially, right? So you want to pay for your quarterback, that's fine, but then he's going to be running for his life because your offensive line isn't good.
And we've seen that movie.
We have. And so I think you build your offensive line, because I think they have guys who can be Ethan Hampton's already shown that he can play at this level. He can play against these teams. That's not saying he's going to be an All-American. I'm just saying he's a good quarterback. So unless you can get a legit stud, I think you go with what you have, unless you get an opportunity for somebody like an Ethan Hampton who wants to come in and compete for the job.
The talk is that they're bringing somebody in. I like Brad, and Brad was advising, and I think that Brad Bielema is thinking along the same lines. We're not going to spend all of our money on a quarterback and try to hope that he just carries us. That's not how Bielema operates, and that's not how football generally works, in my opinion anyway. So I think what we're talking about is probably a veteran who's been at a lower level, and then it's somebody who's not going to be anointed when they come in, and you'll have a chance to compete with Hampton and Boyd. I think that's what's going on. Trey Petty seems to have fallen out of favor. I thought he looked pretty good coming out of high school, but it seems like he's fallen out of favor. So he's probably not in the mix. But the other thing is we do have, like every other position, we do have a lot better players coming along in the pipeline than we've had, and you don't really want you need to be able to plan for those guys to be able to play in a couple years, which is why I'm thinking we're talking about probably somebody who's coming in from a low level with maybe 2 years of eligibility left, and then it'll be a competition between Boyd, Hampton, and the new guy. I think that's what we're looking at. And then also I think they're not planning on like a total rebuild youth movement thing. I think Brett Bielema realizes that we're not in a situation where you can just have a rebuilding year. Like you got to have momentum, and once you have it, you got to continue it in order to succeed in college football. So I think he's probably planning on for some sort of a 7-win-ish type season next year after bringing in a significant number of new players. I think that's what's going on.
They're going to have to do something because, and we talk about it, and I'm sorry if this sounds like a broken record, but what Cignetti has done over at Indiana, regardless of the fact that he influenced people, yes, they've got money behind him, but he influenced them to put money behind him. That has changed the expectation game, and that's why you're going to see the possibility of as many as 40 coaches losing their by the end of the year, because fan bases are like, look, man, you want me to sign the check, I'll sign the check, but you got to win. And these big boosters are like, look, like I said, I'll invest, but you got to produce. So I do think that's something that Bielema is aware of. I'll tell you what really frustrates me is I just can't believe more offensive linemen and their families don't look at Bielema's success of getting guys in the NFL. He's now the number one coach in college football for putting offensive linemen in the NFL, despite having a 3-year gap in that career. And to me, if I was a player, and I'm thinking I'm a 4-star, whatever, if I want to maximize my ability to make it into the NFL, I look at a guy, Brett Bielema, as a guy who can not only help me, but may generationally help my family for a couple generations with the dollars that a good offensive tackle or offensive guard can make if you truly excel at your job. And he's put some guys in the NFL on the offense and defensive line who have excelled. And so to me, I'd be pushing that really hard, because Texas Tech has thrown down the marker on if you get a defense that can play ball, and they've invested in that front 7 on the defense, holy cow, you can go quite a ways. And I would be more inclined to do let's get offensive linemen and defensive linemen, because my quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, and defensive backs and linebackers don't have to be as good if I can construct a good offensive and defensive line.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So, you're going to add at least 3 to the NFL this year off the offensive line, at least 3, possibly 4. I'm sure everybody's aware that we're having 4 graduates off the offensive line. I'm not sure. I don't want to name names like we had to do with quarterback, but one of them I don't think is an NFL player, but I think you're probably going to have 3 guys at least pick up some NFL paychecks off the offensive line. Defensive line, I'm not so sure. It looked good early in the year, but I'm not so sure those guys, except for Akis, if you count him, are going to be in the NFL. I apologize, guys. I have to go.
All right, Steve, thanks for jumping in with us.
Yeah.
Yep.
See you guys, buddy.
So, there we had Steve in for a brief amount of time as we're holding serve for Mr. Stevens to come out of the locker room area with his scoop on what's going on. And I look at this game today this is what you need to do to become. How many times have we watched Iowa just choke the life out of somebody and end up winning by 14 to 18 to 21 points and move on to the next week and do the same thing again? I think Brett Bielema, when you're in the Big Ten, unless you get lucky the way Cignetti did and you get the big dollars behind you, and no doubt Cignetti's a good coach, but I think you have to go through that Iowa, Wisconsin layer before you make it to the Penn State, Michigan layer, and then maybe the Ohio State. I'm not certain where Indiana's going to fall, but I think you got to go to the Iowa and Wisconsin layer, and I feel like that's what Brett Bielema's taking aim at right now. I don't know if you guys agree with that or disagree.
No, I agree with that. I think you're right. You got to try and you got to walk before you can run is what I would use.
Yeah, and he's been successful, and I don't think he wants to go back. I don't remember who said it, whether it was Steve or Brad. We get 7 wins out of next season. I think that's great. And the junior college ranks, you don't hear a lot about anymore. In football, it used to be the king, but now it's Brett's looking at it and not spending a lot of money, and he can develop players that are older. And you can find some diamonds in the rough by doing that. If that's the route they're going to take, I think it'd be pretty good. I know Fedigator was saying that Petty will transfer. I'm a big fan of his. I was hoping he got a shot at it, but at the end of the day, the best man has to take the position, and they have to run with it. That's a tough spot, but every school is like that. Good programs have good quarterback depth, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and in today's world, the fact of the matter is, when you have budgets and you only have so many million you can spend, at least allegedly, you got to make sure you're spending it on the right people. And there may be a better fit for Trey Petty or any other player to go on and try to play. Brad, I know you're just about out of here. Why don't you give us your final thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it's a win, and this is what we wanted, to get that win. And if you got your bad vibe game where you're not quite energetic and not quite there, out of the way before these last 2, I think you're in a good spot. So this is, again, 7 wins with 2 games you're going to be favored. I would expect Illinois to be favored by at least a touchdown in both these next 2 games, maybe more, maybe double figures. So, yeah, let's go out and see what they can do. Win these next 2 games, go 9-3, and woo, it's been a good year.
Yeah. And how many bad vibe games have we had that Illinois is on the opposite end of a 24-6?
I texted you during this game, though. Think about some of those games, like when they play, it looked like they had the game in hand. Was it UTSA a couple of years ago? And then the next thing you know, they're having to win it at the end. Or the Purdue game last year where they had to look like they're rolling in the first half and they have to win it. I don't know. I think this was, I told you, still got BFS, man, battered fan syndrome. So you just expect the worst. And I think we've gotten past that a little bit in basketball, but it's still a little bit there in football, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, football is definitely one that we've got to get over. And basketball, we still fade back to the Kentucky game back in the 80s, having Lowell Hamilton twist his knee in Seattle. There's plenty of things, having, May, run over guys and get the fouls called on Illinois. There's a lot of things we get battered fan syndrome. But I will tell you, one thing I appreciate about Brett Bielema is we don't have to worry. Except for the Indiana game, we've not had to worry about getting destroyed, and we haven't had to, and usually compete strong through the whole game as we look at it. Ked, the interesting thing to me is I thought the run that Jordan Anderson had 20 yards on, I thought if that would have been Valentine or Fagan, that might have been all the way for 6.
I know, and the play call was unique. They had a different wrinkle to it, but they did it for a guy that, like you said, that looks like a fullback, which is not used very much in college football anymore. I would have definitely liked to see Valentine get that position because he probably could have broke it. And if you think about it, they have not had a lot of those this year. A lot of big 70-yard runs. A lot of teams have those. Or the pass where there's a 60, 70-yard pass. They just dunking ball down the field, 40 yards, 30 yards, and that's just who they are. But they're not an explosive offense, but they're really good at it. Mike, let me ask you, when you look at the last 2 games of the schedule, which team scares you the most and why?
Northwestern always scares me because they bite the hardest in years that Illinois needs that win. But I will tell you, on the road at Wisconsin, and that team has some talent. They just haven't played up to the level of their talent.
I agree.
So it scares me that they're going to have that every year. It seems like every team has one game they can point to that, man, if we'd have played like that all season long, we'd have been fantastic. And I think if Illinois catches them on the wrong week, that could be that. That's the biggest thing that I'm concerned about. What do you think?
The Wisconsin game concerns me. I don't know why, just because Brett was there, and I know the motivation is going to be there. And they're not a bad football team. They just haven't put it together.
And they've had a hellaciously tough schedule.
That's
got to be the toughest schedule that I've seen a Big Ten team have in now. 20,
Yeah,
25
it's been
years.
years. And I applaud them for doing it because in today's world, the way college football works, teams don't do that anymore. They just don't. You may get one challenging team, but no, I give them credit for that. They're just Wisconsin has always played Illinois tough, and I know people are just counting them to win 9 games, and I don't. And football is a little different for me because, like you said, if you look at today's game, it was a game where the performance wasn't great, and I think if you let a team like Wisconsin hang around at home, what could possibly happen, and you're going up against some of the same recruits. I just think there's going to be extra motivation. I really do, and all these teams are fighting. The season's almost over. They're all fighting for pride, recruits, jobs, all of it. Mike Loxley's a guy, he's a really classy guy, and I want to see him get into to win a bowl game. He's a good guy, and I know whether we like it or not, the Maryland faithful aren't going to be happy with that. When you see all these other teams making changes and winning, you have to win games, regardless of how good of a person you are. You have to win games, and I guess if I'm a president of a league and I'm thinking, man, I look at these coaches, if everybody's going to win, who loses?
Well, that's the whole problem with the Super League, Ked. I just think these college teams and their fans and their administration are quite naive, because if you were to get a 24-team league where it's just the best of the best, nobody's going 12-0 anymore.
No.
And so an 8-4 year may be a pretty good year, and Ohio State fans suffer through 8-4 years. Those are what they call bad years. You get there, and all of a sudden, instead of 12 games, you're going 8-4, or some years, God forbid, 7-5 or 5-7. Somebody has to lose in those years.
Yeah.
And you can already see in the SEC where the teams at the top are maybe not quite as good as they were 5 years ago, and the teams at the bottom are much better. And you're seeing more weird upsets. And even today, you had an Oklahoma team that hasn't played very well offensively for weeks beat Alabama, and you have a South Carolina team that really had to literally have everything go wrong in the second half for Texas A&M to come back and beat them. That was a 3-6 team that Texas A&M disposed of by 1 point. So I think you get a little bit more like the NFL, and I'm not certain if you need an NFL on Saturday and Sunday. I think you need college football. And I think the strange thing is, you talk to Lauren Tate, who's covered the Big Ten for more years than anybody, 60. And even when you would talk to the old guys, like up in Minneapolis, every once in a while, you talk to Sid Hartman, who covered them until he was 100, I think. But the bottom line is, they'll both tell you that Ohio State hasn't complained about wanting to go into a super league, because they understand the importance of having a league. And let's face it, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana have provided a lot of wins for Ohio State some years. So you need those people. It's a little bit like the WWE. You need that jobber, that Iron Mike Sharp, to go out and eat losses so that Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart look like winners every week. And I don't know that a super league is going to allow that, because then they become so much like the NFL light that why would somebody just say, I'm just going to watch the NFL?
Then I think if you had that many teams, you'd have to rearrange them, because you'd have a lot of teams under 500. You'd have to change your bowls, the way you look at bowls and everything.
Well, I think they'd have a 24 league team, and it would have playoffs just like the NFL. And I don't think they'd care much about the rest of it, Ked. I think they'd operate like a league of their own. And I think it would only be for football. And then I think Illinois would play Michigan in Big Ten basketball, but in football, it'd be the super conference. And if Illinois was in it, fine. But if not, that's just the way it is. I don't think the Big Ten will ever come apart. And the reason I say that, for anybody who's listening, if you do the research and take a look at some of the scientific and clinical research, inner relationships of the Big Ten, those medical schools and different grants from a scientific standpoint, those are worth approximately 9.5 times what the football contracts are. So the sports contracts. So the sports is good money, but it ain't the money they make from other sides. So I'm not certain that a super conference makes all the difference in the world. I don't know. I don't know if you've thought about it, Ked, but I look at it as maybe the best thing to do. I do think if you, in a perfect world, now the Big Ten would never do this and neither would the SEC, but in the perfect world, it'd be great if you could go back to the 80s where you had the conferences with 8 to 10 teams and you had the old Southwest Conference with the Texas schools. You had the Big Eight with Nebraska and Oklahoma, and you had the Big Ten. And if you set it up that way, you would have a pretty good, you'd have it pretty good, and you could have each of those teams have ways to get in, and it'd be a fun tournament.
From football standpoint, you'd have to divide. You just can't have 1 through 24 or whatever, like we mentioned. But I don't know. I'm just really curious to see how this is going to play out. And it's all about money. The last 5 years, college athletics have just changed so much to where, like, the purists, like, even for me, and I should accept this team and see if what it is. With all these new teams, even with Penn State being in the Big Ten, I don't know how to say it, but they're not your traditional teams. And I know things are different. Things are moving in the right direction. I'm not upset with Penn State or anything like that because they brought a lot of recognition to the league from a football standpoint. But the days are just done. And then you think about it right now. Who would have ever thought USC would be in the Big Ten? And I know at one point in time, and it's not a secret, I know North Carolina and Florida State really want to be a part of the Big Ten. It's weird. And I'll tell you what, if Duke had a better all-around program, I know the football program is changing, that's going to be a very attractive school. But I think they could be like, I hate to say this, like Notre Dame, because they do their own thing. But truthfully, since these conferences have done this, maybe I'm wrong. I think Notre Dame has lost some of their buzz a little bit. I just don't see the interest there because when you turn the TV on, the Big Ten's on every channel. And it used to just be the Notre Dame channel, NBC. It's everywhere now, and that's part of their big contracts. I don't know. To me, it would be smart if you're one of those schools to join the Big Ten and SEC. No disrespect to the Big 12, but the Big Ten and the SEC are the kings of college athletics right now. They have the most bite, the most bark, the most money, the biggest fan bases, the best programs right overall from top to bottom. I think those are the schools that's going to drive everything and make all the decisions in the end. And I think the NCAA is going to have to just fall in place and just say, okay, I got to do what you want, because if you don't, you lose them all.
And I think the NCAA will be used. We talked to a friend of the show, Tony Altimore, who's a corporate strategist and also works with a lot of the big universities. He thinks the NCAA's infrastructure to deal with all those smaller sports and stuff will make sure they always are in place, because Big Ten and the SEC just look at that as like, wow, we're going to have to hire a lot of people to do that. We'll just work with the NCAA and then we don't have to worry about doing all that and maintaining it. So we'll see if that's part of how they look at it. And then, like I said, football is essentially divided off and by itself, so it may stay that way. Certainly, I think when you look at the teams that Texas A&M has played this year versus the teams that, let's say, Alabama has played this year, you can look at how Kenton has a comment there that it doesn't make sense to have a conference where teams don't play every team in the conference. And I do agree with that. And I think that's why ultimately, if the Big Ten and the SEC were both to decide, hey, we're gonna do a super conference, I would do it where I'd have each of those two conferences go to 24 teams, and then you can have 4 6-team divisions, and then you play it more like the NFL. I'm just not certain if that's what the fans want. But certainly if you did that by making the Big Ten bigger, by making the SEC bigger, you could also then regionalize your divisions where you're playing Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota,
Nebraska,
Illinois, and Purdue, or Nebraska, go that direction. You get teams that have a little bit of a geography to not like each other, and you get some of those rivalries built back up. But again, you still are in a year where some teams just avoid playing anybody good in the rest of the league. And then you wonder, okay, is their record because their schedule or because they're that good? And that's the challenge. And that's what's causing all the issues with the Big Ten and the SEC wanting automatic qualifiers or not having them. Big Ten wants auto qualifiers so that then they can have a tournament. The Big Ten could, if they had 4 teams, you could have one phase 2 in the conference final.
Yep.
both teams go to the tournament, the CFP, and then you could have number 3 play number 6 and 4 play number 5. And then the winner of those 2 games go, and there's your 4 automatic qualifiers. And trust me, plenty of people would be tuning those games in to watch.
Yeah, there would be, and I agree with that. And the thing is, if they got to the point where there was that many, the conference had that many teams in it. Like for me, not playing Iowa, where I live at, it stinks. I've been on a number of radio shows up here in the area, and for the first time, I don't know how long, Illinois is good, Iowa's good, or Iowa State, and they're always asking who's a better team. You know what? It stinks not being able to play. I play them. Personally, I'd rather play Iowa than Purdue. Purdue is not a rivalry for me. Just because one coach just left the last couple of years, I think that rivalry should be there. And I think we know who the powerhouses in the Big Ten are. Right now, if I had to say, there's Michigan, Oregon, and Ohio State, and Penn State traditionally. Play two of those teams. There's enough games to go around, and where you can play the powerhouses. They can go on the road. They can come to your place. But I want to see those games. I'm not playing Minnesota. I'm not enamored with them, but I think with the way Illinois is going right now, it would be nice to see Minnesota and Iowa on the schedule instead of Purdue. Indiana, they weren't good, but to me, you know what? If they continue to do this, we're going to have to change the way we look at them. And somebody else is going to get to where they are. And if I'm not saying it because we cover Illinois, I think out of all the teams out there, the best team to possibly do it, I would say Illinois is number 1. I think Wisconsin, even though they're having a down year, they have the potential to do it. And I think they're going to start throwing a lot of money around to change this program around. So there's a couple of teams out there that I honestly think that could take that next step where Indiana is. And I think with the way Josh Whitman has supported the program and the fan support, winning, all that stuff is going to make a difference coming up soon.
Yeah, I think we got Matt Stevens coming on. Just to wrap that up, I think talking to Josh, he's thinking if it does go to a super conference, there's going to be a red line, and anybody underneath the red line may not get invited. And it seems like there's a great sense of urgency to want to make sure that Illinois is good enough to get there, and that's where we are. But I think this next season will really test that, because Illinois will have some needs, which will require investment. And then you're going to figure out how much you can fundraise and how much you're willing to use. And those two lines intersect may determine how successful you are. Ked, I know you've been on for this is your second show. Thank you so much for coming on today. We'll have Matt come on, and you can have a great evening.
Good to see you, Matt. Thank you.
Yep.
Matt, you were downstairs, but before, what were your general impressions of the game? What we've talked about is this was a yawner, a 24-6 win that Illinois didn't necessarily play their best, but they held the team with a reputable offense to 2 field goals, and yet it wasn't very sexy, and that's a first world problem that Illinois fans aren't used to having.
Yeah, I thought it was a very traditional November Bielema type win, where if we just do the basic things correctly, we run the football, we play basic defense, we're going to win. And that's the mentality he's taken into November. He took it in 2024. They had it in 2022. And actually they had a bad November, but they played like Michigan down the stretch about as well as anybody in the country before they went into the playoff. But I think Illinois looked at November and said, hey, look, if we can do what we did last November, which was, if you can remember, run the ball and play pretty complimentary defense and just get out of here without making the least amount of mistakes. Bielema talks about it all the time, that teams find a way to lose. Seems like in November, Illinois tries very hard to not find a way to lose. And I think that goes to the leadership of your program, whether that's at head coach, with your assistant coaches, or the veteran core of your team. That's the name of the game. I don't think Luke Altmaier had a great game, but he had a good enough game to get Illinois a victory. I don't think the running game was an A+, but I think it was good enough to get over 200 yards for the second straight game. And by God, come November, Illinois figures out how to run the ball, don't they? So they do that. And I think Illinois also defensively, look, Brett Bielema said it today, like Aaron Henry gets a game ball, because that defensive game plan against what I thought was, and I know he's 19, but that quarterback's going to be really good. I don't know if it's going to be for Maryland by the end of his career, but he's going to be really good somewhere in college football. and he's one of the best 19-year-olds I've seen in a long time. They did a lot today to really frustrate him, and they did a lot today on third down to get off the field. So Brett said it today, Aaron Henry gets a game ball. I really think before the end of the year, you're gonna hear Brett basically say, hey, look, I'm rolling with this staff, just to give everybody on our message boards the heads up. The players have gotten tired of hearing about Aaron Henry's hot seat. Brett's kind of gotten tired of hearing about it, and I think you're going to start to see that. I think Brett is tired of hearing about Bart Miller's hot seat, because he mentioned it both on the radio and in post-game, that the offensive line, when they're running the football, and quite frankly, when they're protecting Luke, have done a really good job in these last month and a half. And the marriage of what Barry Lunny wants to do offensively and what Bart Miller wants to do up front, it's not a perfect marriage, like schematically and stylistically, but by God, in November, don't they figure out how to way to make it work? Like I said, no, it wasn't sexy, but like Brett has beaten a lot of teams this way. He's beaten a lot of big boy teams this way. And Brett has called wins like this borderline erotic. At the end of the day, this is what you get when you hire Brett Bielema as your head coach and you put a roster together like this. You figure out a way to have a veteran team beat a very young Maryland team, because Maryland figured out a lot of different ways to lose this football game, and Illinois just didn't. And I think when you're at home, you can do that. And I think Illinois did that in a really mature way today. And I just thought it was a real mature victory. They had some turnovers, they had some faults, probably should have punched it in there on the 1st and goal from the whatever it was. But at the end of the day, you walk out of here with an 18-point victory, and Maryland never got in the end zone. And so now you've had 2 straight games against Maryland and Rutgers where, Aaron Henry's kind of flipped that switch on the defense. And if that's the way this is going to be for the last 2 games, I don't see there's any reason why Illinois can't finish 9-3. And that's a really successful season. I think everybody in the Smith Center would agree with you on that. So
no, yeah, that
would agree with anybody on that. So yeah, that's where we are right now.
There is crazy.
Go ahead.
If anybody's disagreeing with that, they're absolutely nuts. As we look at this team, what was interesting, Jordan Anderson had a
20-yard run.
Yeah, 20-yard run on one that I think if anybody else would have been in there, may have scored. But nonetheless, obviously, injuries in the backfield seem to be ongoing.
Yeah, Aiden Lawfrey was cleared to go, but he didn't practice until Thursday. And I'm not allowed to call it a lie anymore, but we got a little bit of a fib from Brett Bielema on Monday that Aiden Lawfrey was good to go, and he expected to see him on Tuesday. He did not go until Thursday. Because he didn't go until Thursday, Brett really didn't feel good about putting him out there. And also, let's be very clear about this. I think Bielema and specifically Thad Ward, the running back coach, have gained a lot of confidence in Khalil Valentine. And so when you have that, I'm going to say it because I don't think any of these guys are going to portal at the end of the year. I don't know that. I could be completely wrong about all this, because Lord knows people portal and everybody goes, wow, I didn't see that one coming. But if all 3 of these running backs come back, and they're all in line too, if they want to, I just don't see Illinois going into the portal for a running back again because of what they feel like they have. Because if you remember last year, they ran the ball heavy with Aiden Lawfrey because Caden Fagan, Josh McCray got really hurt at the end of the year. Josh didn't really get totally healthy until obviously the Citrus Bowl. Until the Citrus Bowl, where he was the MVP and he was eating oranges like with the skin on them. So you don't have Aiden Lawfrey in this November. So now we go with Khalil Valentine and Caden Fagan, which is your classic thunder and lightning, if you really want to go there. And Brett got asked, like, when it was 1st and goal near the goal line, did you have any thought of, handing the ball to Caden Fagan? And he was like, yeah, but like I felt good about what we called. And then we did the barge thing because I demanded it on 2nd down. And I probably shouldn't have done that because Barry was calling a hell of a game. And I just probably should have stayed the hell out of his kitchen. And the whole thing got messed up. But I do think that Thad Ward and Brett Bielema like those 2 running backs right now. They like Khalil Valentine and they like Caden Fagan. They like the combination there, and I think that's why Illinois has run the ball for over 200 yards these last 2 games. I think that's a key stat because we all know that object number 1 for Brett Bielema is run the ball. And if they can do that, and also I think the last part of this, because he doesn't have that many more games left, so you can run the tires out of him, having that +1 in the run game with Luke Altmaier is really key. I think that what he can do with his feet especially in those design runs that Barry has put together. Luke said it after the game to us. He's, well, I don't think teams are accounting for me because we haven't done it all year, and now we're doing it. And you're seeing I would say the back pages of the Illinois playbook get opened up a little bit here in November, just like you saw it last year. And I think that it's really fun to see because you're going to have to go to Wisconsin on the road and run the ball. And I think that if they run the ball close to 200 yards in Madison, they're going to win. And then Northwestern's going to make you grind out a game even at home. And I think they feel like this was the time for this offensive line to get going. This was the time for Khalil Valentine to show what he can do in his second year here. And this was the time for Caden Fagan to close out games just like he did today.
Yeah. And I thought that, again, I didn't think they played poorly. But the interesting thing to me was the way it worked out. Illinois was, I believe it outgained them 173 to 172 at the half. And yet when you look at it in the second half, ended up 397 to 293 in yards. And all these measures they were darn near equal at the half, all fell heavily in Illinois' side, particularly first downs, particularly time of possession and yards and rushing yards. And to me, if you wanted to get Brett Bielema's signature, printing out a copy of the final statistics and having him sign that would be just about the appropriate thing for him to sign.
I think the reason this is an Aaron Henry signature game is Maryland was 3 of 12 on third down and 0 for 2 on fourth down. So that's 3 of 14.
Yep.
Mike, when you're not consistently getting third down conversions, your number of plays goes down, and then your number of yards goes down, and your number of opportunities to score goes down. To keep Maryland out of the end zone was going to have to basically be a game in which Illinois got advantage situations on third down and then got off the field on those third downs by making tackles. And they really did that today. I thought what really discombobulated Malik Washington today, was the idea that a 6'7" Eli Cohen and a 6'5" Pat Farrell and a very long Gabe Yakus and a very long, when he was in the game and not concussed, James Thompson Jr. and a very long Anthony McCullum for a nose tackle was doing very basic things with their arms in order to get pass knockdowns and create avenues for which Malik Washington has to throw it like Patrick Mahomes or John Mateer and has to throw it around angles. And because this guy with Eli Cohen with a 6'7" height and probably an 8.5, almost 9 foot wingspan is be able to get his offhand all the way up in the air. And then Malik Washington's 6'5", but if he's in that pocket, the whole game plan was to basically make him uncomfortable about where he could go window-wise in the pocket. And the fact that he didn't abuse Illinois in the run game, meaning Washington, like the way he did against Rutgers and the way he's done all year, was a key to Illinois finally doing their job. Look, the deal with the Aaron Henry thing is, and I talked to Dylan Rosiak and both Matthew Bailey, is that I personally believe that there was a veteran leadership meeting that basically the players looked at each other and said, hey, look, our coach is taking a lot of crap because we're not doing our job and we're not doing what they're teaching us, like on Saturdays. That's the long and the short of it. People are going to talk about Aaron getting more aggressive. I really hope the PFF numbers validate what I saw with my eyes, but it felt like Illinois got vertical with 4 rushers a lot today. And I felt like their second level, meaning Rosiak and the linebackers, the inside linebackers, did a really good job of basically saying, we're not going to let you just go on take off. Like, you're going to have to break a tackle in order to do that. And sometimes, like with Washington's quarterback, Damon Williams, he did break those tackles. Like, he did get outside. Some of those were organized. But, yeah, I felt like the defense getting off the field on third and fourth down was huge. I thought that fourth down stop that they got near midfield early in the game was huge. I felt, obviously, Brett and now the whole stadium knows what that first and goal from the 3, and then they get the stop, was the backbreaker for Maryland. It obviously was, but I felt like Illinois got third down stops and forced Maryland to punt a lot. I felt like the offense never got in a consistent rhythm where they felt like they could go 70 or 80 yards on a drive consistently. But it was a game in which the defense, they haven't gotten in the end zone on us yet, fellas. Like, we're going to make them punt. We're probably not doing the best job from a field position standpoint, but if we make them punt and we make them settle for 3, I felt like when Maryland got the turnover and then they had to settle for 3, I thought that was huge. I thought that was really huge. I felt like we can go through all the Aaron Henry narratives. I felt like when Maryland got the ball back with 66 seconds left and then had to punt and actually gave Illinois enough time to actually maybe go down and possibly score, but that was huge. And in a first half where Brett Bielema didn't feel like they played very well, I was like, man, your defense has done everything that they really haven't done for a long time. And then I feel like with Bart Miller and the offensive line, these guys are really starting to play like we thought they would early in the year, which is, again, this marriage of Barry Lunney and Bart Miller. It's not great in September, but damned if it's not one of the better and more consistent offenses and basic offenses in November. And it's what you saw today. And I'm really happy for guys like Khalil Valentine and Caden Fagan and guys that in the run game that make it go, like a Tanner Arkin, like a Jordan Anderson, who, when he doesn't get the ball, he's still an integral part of creating those holes. And then guys up front, I thought they did a really good job. Brett Bielema thought the offensive line today did a really good job of, for the most part, keeping Luke upright and also protecting their quarterback, even when he decided to take off and on those design plays, because that is a lot of punishment that you're asking your quarterback to do. And that's probably why Luke's not been asked to do it for the entire year.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. We're getting close to our time limit here, but thanks for giving us that update for folks. Eye on the Illini will return Monday night with a preview of Wisconsin. We'll have Lance Allen, former WTMJ sports anchor there. Will be talking to us a little bit about that and making sure that we get the opportunity to find out a little bit about that team before they come to, I guess, before Illinois goes up there. And of course, Wednesday night, we will have coverage of the game as Illinois goes to face Alabama in the United Center in Chicago. And then, of course, next week, you then end up with Illinois going to Wisconsin. With all those things coming up, it's going to be a pretty exciting time to be an Eye on the Illini listener. Please subscribe to our podcast, to our YouTube channel, and then come to IlliniGuys.com. That's where you get access to the boards, where if you have a question about what Matt had to say here tonight, you can simply put on the board and say, hey, Matt, what did you mean by this? And he can answer you. It's a great community with thousands of Illini fans around the world, and you can be a part of it. We'd love to have you be there as well. $99 a year, and it's a great way to spend some of your time. And if you have your downtime, it's nice not to think about politics and all the real news going on. You can just talk about Illini sports or sports in general. Until next time, folks, go Illini.